You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
You are listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes, the Addictions Coach in the Addictions Academy. My guest today is Annie Grace of The Naked Mind, and I'm very excited to have her. She's the author of The Naked Mind, How to Control Alcohol, Find Freedom, Discover Happiness, and Change Your Life. Annie grew up in a one-room log cabin without running water or electricity outside of Aspen, Colorado. She discovered a passion for marketing, and after graduating with a Master's of Science, she drove into corporate life. At the age of 26, Annie was the youngest vice president in a multinational company, and her drinking career began in earnest. At 35, as a global C-level marketing role, she was responsible for marketing in 28 countries and drinking almost 2 bottles of wine a night. Knowing she needed a change, but unwilling to submit to a life of deprivation and stigma, Annie set out to find a painless way to regain control. Annie no longer drinks and has never been happier. She also wrote the book, The Naked Mind, and shared it with the world. Annie, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
So tell my listeners, because we have all different kinds of listeners. We have sober listeners, using listeners. What is the Naked Mind? Is this a way to control your drinking, to stop your drinking? Tell us about it and what it is exactly.
So it's really a good entry point into the conversation. Most people who sort of read the book do stop drinking, but that isn't like the absolute, bottom line. I think that one of the things that I found really difficult in my drinking is that when I was trying to control it, when I was trying to get back in control, it was really counterproductive. It made me actually drink more frequently, and I would end up, refraining for a few days and then binging, and it became really cyclical. So one of the things that my book does is it actually addresses some of your subconscious beliefs around alcohol, which allows you to make a more mindful choice, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a willpower-based choice where you are just kind of white-knuckling it, trying to get through because you've actually seen some new truths around alcohol, which help in a lot of ways, but a lot of that means that not everybody stops completely at the end of the book. Some people do go back to mindful drinking, but I would say it's the exception, but I would also say that it is also when people have not really changed their brain to the extent that other people may have. So it's a very personal thing.
So let's talk about that. You said controlled drinking. What does that mean, and how would you explain that to somebody who says, well, there's no such thing as controlling your drinking. Either you're drinking or you're not.
So, I control my drinking by not putting alcohol in my body. And so, that is how I personally control it. I think that, to say that there isn't a person who can, I know a guy who every Friday night drinks 17 units of alcohol, doesn't drink for the rest of the week, and has done that for 16 years. So, that's how he controls his drinking. I think it really is how you feel most in control. Either we're in the driver's seat or we're in the passenger seat. And for a lot of people, you can't put alcohol in your body at all without getting taken for a ride. And so I think that you need to be really aware of where you are on that spectrum. And that often comes from just a lot of soul searching and really figuring out what's right for you. Like I said, for me, controlling it means not drinking it.
Okay. So that's kind of a new concept for a lot of people, because when they talk about controlling your drinking, they don't think of it as an abstinent-based platform. They think of it more, controlling your drinking means having 2 drinks and then stopping. So when you came out with this, did you get any pushback from the community, or were they more accepting of the new message?
It was interesting because I wasn't really involved in the community before I wrote this book. This was my own journey and my own kind of head down in my office, figuring out my own stuff, doing my own research. And so when I came out with it, it was interesting. I did get pushback. I actually had a friend of my dad's who had been sober for 28 years call me up sort of halfway through the book and say, you know, we really need to talk. And he came down to my house, and he lives a few hours away. So a few days later, he came over to my house. He walks into my house, he gives me a big hug, and he goes, I finished your book last night, and we don't really need to talk anymore. Like, I understand. And so I think that it was really interesting because his journey through it, we actually arrived at the same place, but I can't tell you. So yes, there's been a little bit of pushback, but I can't tell you how many thousands of letters I've gotten from people saying, you know what? Thank you so much for titling the book Control Alcohol, because if you didn't title it that, I would have never picked it up. And because of that, I now don't drink anymore. So sometimes we just need to have, you know, this idea. For me, I feel really passionately about the idea, and I know it was true in my own life, that if it was all or nothing, if it was abstinence or drinking, I was going to choose drinking because abstinence was too scary for me. Or I was going to choose drinking to the point where my life had become so bad and I had hit such a bottom that abstinence was the less scary of the life I was currently living. But I don't believe that we have to necessarily go to that point. I think we can start asking ourselves, you know, a better question about where, you know, would I be happier with less alcohol? Because that question isn't as scary as, do I have a problem and can I never drink again? And that entry point can lead us to all sorts of really, really cool places because we start really unpacking it for ourselves. And like I said, I ultimately, although I didn't come into the conversation wanting to be abstinent, I ultimately decided that that for me is the right answer.
Okay. So how did you arrive there? So you had a different journey or different path than most people, but how did you go from 2 bottles of wine a day to abstinence? Because that seems like that's like the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing I did, and this is going to sound really probably weird to your listeners as well, but the first thing I did is I stopped trying to stop drinking. Because there was so much pain in that cycle for me. There was so much pain, and I stopped believing myself. I'd make myself all sorts of promises, not till 5 p.m., only wine, never beer, only beer, never wine, never hard alcohol, not until the weekends. I mean, on and on and on. And so when I couldn't keep any of those promises, I just absolutely lost all faith in myself. And I said, there's a bigger question here. There's a question of why am I in this situation? Because I had times in my life where I didn't drink a lot. I didn't drink a ton in college. I had times in my life where I wasn't so needing of alcohol. I had times where I didn't believe it was key to relaxing or having a good time or even just feeling normal. And so I said, why has this changed? And you know what? I'm going to stop trying to stop because the noise of stopping for me without any of the knowledge was so great that it was preventing me from getting any of the knowledge. And so I stopped trying to stop drinking and I committed to myself a year. And I said, I'm going to go through this and I'm just going to find out the answers to these questions. That's going to be my priority. I need to understand why now am I so deprived feeling if I don't have a drink when I remember being a kid and not even caring about alcohol. What has changed? And so that really launched me into this year of research. And I formed this theory that basically consciously I wanted to stop drinking, but due to a lifetime of subconscious conditioning, my subconscious brain had not got that memo. It still saw alcohol as this key to feeling better, to relaxing, to having a good time, to having better sex, you name it, anything. It saw alcohol. So when I would stop, it was this very willpower based stop, and my willpower would run out, which they now know that happens. And I would end up drinking more in my periods of trying to stop than I was before. And so when I started to unravel that and started to really see, okay, well, what is alcohol? What is it doing inside my brain? What does it really relax me or not? Does it actually make things more fun or not? And I started to look at the science and I started to look at all of these different layers of the substance. By the time I got done with that year, I walked out of my office and I told my husband, you know, if you want to drink with me, tonight's the night, because after tonight, I'm done drinking. And he looked at me and was like, what? Like, really? And I was like, yep. And so we split a bottle of wine, and I got really sick on half a bottle of wine, which was super surprising because I had very high tolerance. But I think it was also just, Providence sort of saying, this is it for you. And that was it, because I really saw the truth of the substance, and I felt very strongly that it didn't have a place in my life anymore.
Let's talk about the subconscious brain for a second, because this is such a different idea. I mean, along with what we do, because I'm a clinician and been doing this for years, we talk about getting to the root cause. What's really causing the drinking, but you don't hear people in the industry talk about subconscious. So let's talk about that for a second, because I think you're onto something in terms of like a theory. What in the subconscious did you find in yourself that was keeping you stuck?
Yeah, there's really, I've kind of distilled it down to three layers of beliefs, right? There's the belief around the substance, and that's that alcohol is relaxing. And if you're just drinking for the belief around the substance, and someone comes up to you and shows you the evidence that alcohol actually creates stress, that releases cortisol in your body, and it actually is linked to anxiety and depression, pretty quickly you could be like, okay, I can let go of that belief. But then there's this layer deeper, which is these beliefs that society has. And those are beliefs that sound like, oh, it's not going to be a party if I'm not drinking, or I'm not going to have fun at that baseball game if I'm not drinking, or I'm going to be left out of the tribe or the crowd if I'm not drinking. And those are a little bit harder to deal with because of how alcohol saturated our society is. But again, if you can look at those beliefs and really unpack them and overcome them, then you can really make progress in letting go of alcohol. And then I think the third layer of beliefs, and where people can get very, very stuck and actually need to do significant inner work in order to finally free themselves, are these beliefs about self. So it's really substance, society, and self. And these beliefs about self sound like, for me, it was, I'm not going to be able to make it through the day with my 3 kids if I don't have a glass of wine, or 3 or 5, and it was, I'm not strong enough to be a mom without wine. I'm not holding it together at my work without this. I'm not outgoing enough to network without alcohol. And so when I started to attack and understand those beliefs and unpack them and do the work to see if they were true or not, then, it really lets go of you. But there are those different levels. And some people are drinking for reasons of substance. They definitely only drink on occasion. They're pretty social drinkers. They're not drinking for these deep-seated beliefs. They can read my book and never drink again, and like on a dime, just quit. And other people, even with those society beliefs, same thing. But often when people have beliefs about self, we really have to go deeper into our subconscious and understand, okay, what is at the root of why we're doing this? What are we trying to escape from? What beliefs do we have about ourselves that we're not good enough, not significant enough, that we're not going to be loved? These types of things that we're trying to numb out with a drink.
Now, it's interesting. So you're doing what the clinicians are doing. You're going to the root cause of it. Would I be correct in saying you're not a clinician yourself, or you're not studied in the art of addiction? You were a C-level executive, correct?
Yep. I've just written a book.
Well, you haven't just written a book. You've touched a lot of people's lives. Are you finding that people like your style more than clinicians because you're very approachable and they can say you relate to me versus, a doctor's clinical book per se?
It's interesting because I couldn't answer that question because I don't have that information. I can tell you that I have a lot of people who reach out to me all the time. Last month I got like 3,500 emails as an example. And most of those are just thank you letters and people really appreciating, the work. But I don't know enough about I haven't had anybody say I like this better than a clinician. So I certainly couldn't answer that.
You have another book on the way, I understand. Tell us about that. Tell us how that's a little bit different than the first one and what you're trying to do in that sense with the second book.
This book came from really 3 different places. First, I had a review on my book and it said, I read this for my brother and now I don't even like beer. Thanks a lot. 5 stars. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of people who actually probably alcohol isn't doing them any real favors, but they're not at the point where they're going to actually actively look out for something to get back in control or to stop drinking. And so I said, that's really interesting. At the same time, I got another email from a person who had done the Whole30, and she said, I couldn't get through the Whole30 because of drinking until I found your book. And now I was able to do the Whole30 successfully. Thank you very much. And I was like, wow, there's this huge appetite for challenges. And at the same time, I came across this really mind-boggling statistic from the CDC that says 90% of excessive drinkers are not clinically dependent. And I was like, we really need to lower the barrier to entry into this conversation. For somebody who's just drinking and maybe not even really aware that drinking is causing them the fatigue and the stress and the different sort of things that alcohol causes in the human body, they might not even be willing to, they're not even aware that alcohol could be the issue. I like to make this analogy is for me, when I was drinking with my kids and my job, I felt like alcohol was the duct tape holding my life together. When in reality, when I was able to see everything I've now seen, alcohol was the chisel that was destroying the foundation of my life. Right. But I couldn't see it at the time because I wasn't aware. I was so certain that it was the helper, not the harmer. And so this next book is called The Alcohol Experiment, and it's a 30-day challenge for anybody who just wants to ask the simple question, would my life be happier drinking a bit less? Let me find the answer to that through this personal experiment. Go for 30 days. Unlike a lot of the 30-day challenges that are out there, we have Dry January, Dry July, all these sorts of things that actually, without any kind of education or reconditioning of the thinking, makes alcohol more important than it was prior to the challenge, because you basically invoked the forbidden fruit syndrome. And now you're just quite, anticipating that day 31 when you're going to go ahead and have that drink. And you've actually, although you're abstinent, you've made alcohol more important. Whereas with the alcohol experiment, every single day through a chapter in the book or online through a video, there's a very, message and education that really empowers people to make a mindful choice at the end of the 30 days. And a lot of people go on to do 30 more days or stop altogether, or at least go back to it in a much more mindful way than they were before. But again, it's really aimed at, the 90% of people who are not clinically addicted, because I'm very aware of the fact that if you take somebody who is clinically addicted to alcohol and just say abruptly stop for 30 days, and I have all sorts of disclaimers about this because it can be very dangerous and obviously would not want to cause any more harm.
Wow. So you kind of did something very unique. I've been treating food addiction for 20 years, and you took the food addiction concept and put it on alcohol, which is if you go on a diet for 30 days, 10 days, whatever, you start Monday morning and you say, I'm going to go 14 days and not eat sugar. On the 15th day, I'm going to eat sugar. And then all you do for 14 days is focus on sugar and look forward to having that cake on the 15th day. And you did that with alcohol, that's never been done. I got to commend you for that, because that's a really good analogy platform that I think a lot of people will understand.
Thank you.
Now, do you have people reaching out for you to privately coach them or counsel them? Are they thinking that you're able to do that, or do you do that, or how does that work?
I do not do that. I do have an online group learning platform where it's basically a Facebook group and a Zoom video call where we all get on and discuss the work, and it's recorded material. But I do not do any personal one-on-one coaching.
Okay. All right. And how would our listeners reach you? Give us some of your information. Where can they find your book? Where can they find you? If they want to learn more about this process, how can they reach out to you?
Great. So my main website is thisnakedmind.com. And then if you're interested in the 30-day challenge, if that sounds something that's right for you, that is at alcoholexperiment.com. And it's on there. And again, I would say that is definitely, the information in it can be amazing, sort of no matter where you are on the journey, because it's science-based. It will teach you a ton. However, again, I would caution that if you are really actively drinking and maybe going to suffer from severe withdrawal symptoms, you need to do the alcohol experiment in, conjunction with a clinician.
Wonderful. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experience with us. This has been very enlightening.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You've been listening to Unpause Your Life with the addictions coach, Dr. Callie Estes and Annie Grace. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you, guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape, in love with my pain. I may be weak, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To believe. I took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of flying. Now I'm so far from solid ground. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape, in love with my pain. I may be weak, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just